of the students, I need to make arrangements. So, but I'm usually known that I give fair examples of their grading, so nothing to worry about. All right, everyone ready?
Everything's over there.
Okay. So I hope nobody had a heart attack while prepping for this exam, and I hope everyone.
Just sleep deprivation.
Well, the biggest lie I was told in grad school was you can sleep after graduation. So
About what?
you can sleep after graduation. That was the biggest lie I was told in grad school.
Yeah, how do you feel now?
Depends. Did you just switch that on?
Yeah, you just turned it on now.
What?
Wait, did you just turn it off?
No, I just checked to turn it on. Alright, good. Welcome back from the midterm. I try to get this graded until next week. Knowing it's Thanksgiving, I'm out of town. But I have a few good chunks of time in between families, so it's going to be interesting. We'll talk a little bit about particular chapter number 7, subdivisioning, today in the lecture, and then I will pop up the assignment number 2, which is a creative assignment. Remember, the first one was like a reverse engineering, full given context, and you had to assign a pattern and your ideas of land uses. Assignment 2 is actually giving you context, a short make-up story around it, a pile of market data, and you can make decisions how you would actually develop a 13.5 acres site. And the idea and the focus is actually on making a small sketch how this could look like. And you have seen how charrettes and sketching ideas start to evolve out of the discussion in our presentation last week with our guest speaker, where he basically showed you guys tons of mini sketches and then the final plan. So something in between the mini sketch and the final plan is the assignment number 2. The reason for doing this is if you introduce land use design and site planning towards real estate development, you're walking a line between a planning studio where you sit down and for hours you will sketch, and then on the other side, in the real estate world, for hours you will sit down with your Excel spreadsheet and run your performance and feasibility analysis. So this is the gray zone, the interfacing zone of let's have both worlds merge and have you being really creative in terms of putting your own thoughts, your own ideas in place. It's about how to tell a story, because this assignment doesn't give you a limitation in terms of monetary values. It doesn't give you a budget. It's only grounded in parking constraints by land use and the full size of that the part, and you need to realize what is the context. Can I help you guys? What's going on? And the kind of the context of the environment. Does it make sense to make, let's say, put a water world spa system on that side when there's no demand? Yeah? Yes, please.
Just a side question. Do you have a spare iPhone cable?
No, I don't.
Does anyone?
I don't. Thanks for the question. Alright, so for about the next hour, I'm doing this assignment, discussion, and lecture, and then I want to really work with you guys from Urban Plan. Want to catch up where we at, what your group has in mind, what's the current status quo, the Lego blocks are still in the office. I have to get them home. So, and I work with your group together to see how we can get you up to speed. Okay? So I have two more things when we talk about vision and the vision idea. So I tried after the midterm, I tried to make this a little bit more relaxing, to get your brains working again. So one of the examples I want to present here, if this would work, is actually the discussion on vision. And it just died on me. All right. Extend. Got it? All right. Technology. Here we go. So we will talk about vision. In case you haven't done it yet, City of Fort Lauderdale actually is a very detailed vision plan here on the City Managers Department side webpage, yeah, where you can actually scroll down and find vision statement, the general idea of what they think they're doing. They also say, okay, how we are actually doing things. Yeah? We are connected, we are community, we are prosperous. So somewhat an objective and a mission statement. We are a community. And if you click through this, and you will see, okay, how they translate that, and you also can see how the progress is done here. But the interesting thing is, if you look at placemaking, no? Places, our spaces with felt value, identity, and culture, the interesting thing is how they actually present it.
Have you ever closed your eyes and imagined the city where you want to live, work, play, raise a family? Fast forward to Fort Lauderdale 2035. We are connected by bike paths, walking paths, greenways, waterways, planes, trains, trolleys, boats, and cars. We move seamlessly through a safe transportation system where the pedestrian is first. From new modes of transportation to electric cars, Fort Lauderdale will continue to create sustainable transportation solutions. We are ready, surrounded by winding waterways and 7 miles of golden beaches. We are rising to the challenges and embracing the opportunities that the water presents, making our beaches, bridges, roads, and homes more resilient. By investing in our infrastructure, we'll continue to enhance our quality of life now and for the future. We are community. Because we understand that our diverse community, historic neighborhoods, and mixed-use facilities offer something for everyone. We value our neighborhoods and our neighbors. We will continue to encourage redevelopment that protects history and builds on the unique characteristics and distinct identities in our neighborhoods. We are here. From the blue wave beaches to the chic ease of Las Olas, from the riverfront to historic Sistrunk to the uptown corridor. Fort Lauderdale is an urban center with a reputation for being paradise and plenty of sunshine. We celebrate our plethora of natural assets as we continue to strengthen our public places and parks. From art galleries to museums, the Performing Arts Center to festivals, we will continue to showcase our art and culture to the world. We are prosperous, establishing ourselves as a world-class international business center and one of the most desirable locations for new, expanding, or relocating businesses. We will continue to be the urban laboratory for education and business. Through the cooperative efforts of residents, businesses, and local government, we are evolving into a city that offers the best of both worlds, an attractive business environment, and an outstanding quality of life. We are united. We are international, multi-generational, culturally aware, and and diverse. By remaining focused on our mission, we are confident that we can address the challenges that lie ahead and work to preserve and enhance the unique characteristics that make Fort Lauderdale such a special place. Fast forward, Fort Lauderdale 2035, the city you never want to leave.
All right.
I like it.
Good and interesting advertisement for placemaking and how they actually implement the goals of their vision statement with all these buzzwords. The scary part, this is the first time I actually realized that the last sentence is a theme, the city you'd never want to leave. I'm pretty sure someone who scripted that used to listen to Hotel California or something like that. It's kind of a very, very funny thought on that. I don't know. It's maybe it's just an adaptation of the city that never sleeps. Yeah. So I don't know.
It's kind of lengthy for a city catchphrase.
It's a 3-minute video, but I think if you've never seen it before, if you've never seen that place before, it's okay with the typical attention span. This is a video marketed on the webpage. Presentation, slideshow. For some reason, presenter mode was the upside down. All right. And for some reason, the targeted group of their video, you find that on their webpage and on YouTube. So it's not necessarily just the economic community or a specific branch of ideas you have. It's the whole package. I'm pretty sure you can market that just for businesses in a different way. The South Florida Business Journal just recently, this edition or last week's edition print, had an article on how they actually now expanded business incentives into companies from Texas to lure them in to actually locate here, Fort Lauderdale and Miami area. So there's an interesting component to that in that mission statement. We are a business. We are an awesome environment to create businesses and establish more.
What separates a small city from medium size from a large? Is there an actual number or population?
The census actually differentiates that in terms of what kind of intervals or categories you have between rural regions, rural landscapes. Then you have suburbia, small cities, medium cities, large cities. I would have to look up the exact numbers. They might differ as well a little bit because by state, but they're typically a range of, let's say, 50 to 100,000 is, let's say, a medium range city. However, depends on which state you are, that could be a very large city.
Like if you're in Vermont, that'd be huge.
I used to live in Boise, Idaho. 215, 220,000 city itself. Metropolitan area was 660,000. That is a small piece of city here. If you look at our metropolitan area, the whole stretch from, let's say, Coral Springs up to West Palm, 6.5 million. Is that right? Yeah.
I think it's 5 million in all of South Florida.
But compared to 660,000 in a plus minus hour up and down drive time, there are different densities at work, different perceptions. If you look at the state of Delaware, the total population of the state of Delaware and what we have in one large city, they complement.
I was thinking more in terms of government or the state saying we are encouraging small business to enter,
But that's different. You don't mix up small business with small cities. Yeah. You can have a lot of small businesses in a large city, or you can have a lot of small businesses in a small town. Yeah. But the town is perfect for connecting and networking. Or it doesn't have to be a town, could be 1 or 2 towns in a specific valley. Silicon Valley is one of those incubators, or one of those examples. or you have a series of universities in the proximity. Now you suddenly are in New England states, yeah, where you have this kind of brain power connecting to entrepreneurship. Yeah. So small business does not necessarily mean it's locating in small areas or small population. I would rather think it's a mix. The fun discussion I had last weekend was about the city of Boise, and like, so what do you do in Boise besides the outdoor stuff? Well, there's international leading company in microchips, Micron is one. HP Plotter Division is one. Yeah, a lot of engineering in the computer works. A lot of startups. Maybe one of the famous startups in the past decades is bodybuilding.com. Who knew that this was a garage company in a backyard in Boise, Idaho, or vicinity. Yeah? And now it's a multi-million-dollar worldwide industry for weightlifting and nutrition. So it doesn't matter if it's a small town, medium town, or large town. The important part is the small business idea. It needs to find the right environment, yeah? And the right conditions to grow. Yeah? The question here with the internet is, you could, in theory, sit in Hawaii at the beach and write the app that makes you millions. Yeah? Like Instagram, as an example. It would be interesting to look at what was the physical environment for the Instagram team to write that code and get so successful with it. Yeah? We know that Microsoft, as an example, started out in a garage as well, in Seattle. And you know, Seattle is a great place to live. Yeah?
Other than the rain.
Well, people like the rain there, so most of them. All right, let's talk about problems of control, particularly now focusing on chapter number 7. And chapter number 7 is the large headlines basically saying, okay, we need to deal with subdivisions. Subdivision is a process, a legal process from the planning law, and the site planning has limitations in control. One of the limitations we always face is its boundary. Yeah? How are we going to develop a specific site or parcel? Well, we're going to take a look at what are, first of all, the boundaries. What is the extent of it? As a good site planner, we are going to look outside of that box as well. What else is in its proximity? You got to know what's not just competition, but what complements your proposed idea. Yeah? If you want to build a movie theater, you might need customers to come to watch movies. Yeah? And it doesn't make sense to build a movie theater right next to the other one as part of your competition, unless you're dealing with old school versus new school technology. Yeah? You gotta have that competition advantage at that point. What we're going to take a look at is the layout of subdivisions, and then contrast that in terms of the long-range site plans and future site plans. And this goes hand in hand with the idea of what we learned last week from Doug Smith's presentation about master planning certain specific uses, and this is somewhat repetitive. Yeah? Subdivisioning, or subdivision itself, is the process whereby a vacant land is divided into lots and public right-of-way, providing sites for future individual buildings. Or as I try to explain it, you have a large cake and you try to figure out how to make 10 or 13 pieces out of it, or just 2 big chunks. You've got to have an idea how you're going to slice and dice your turkey on Thanksgiving. Yeah? So it's the same thing with the subdivision process in land development. Yeah? This is the example from the first session when I made a comment about the region, but you can see easily here a larger piece of land was subdivided into, let's say, 2 cul-de-sac sections, and each cul-de-sac section got lots assigned. You also can see here on the double-edged line here, a thick line, and then just dotted. That is somewhat the right-of-way or sidewalk alignment. Yeah, somewhat a consideration that there will be sidewalk. Some states, some planning municipalities are considering the sidewalk as a right of way. Some put it as an easement, as a legal agreement between the property owner and the public or the municipality into place. Depending on how your city is regulating the right of way for, let's say, just a sidewalk, responsibility for, let's say, snow removal is part of the public or private owner. In the Florida concept, homeowner association or your property management company would regulate that. And we usually don't have snow. Yeah? But the regulation of how we deal with common areas is usually a private party in the Florida context. Here, the example would be probably an agreement between public and the property owner. Yeah? One thing you have to probably learn in that US regulations class, that this can be or is, until it's built, private property from the builder or developer's company. That street, in theory, is a private street. And some of the agreements, part of the subdivision process, and some particular of the communication between you as the developer and the planning department is, are you giving this away? Impact fees, and then later on, are your maintenance costs? Are you giving this away as a private street to the public? And then the city will maintain that street and is responsible for the maintenance and the costs in the future. Yeah? Or are you going to keep it as a private road, but then you are responsible for whatever happens on that street? Let's talk about just maintenance. Yeah? In other states where we actually have 4 seasons, as with heavy snow, the maintenance in this case would be snow removal. And believe it or not, you don't have to be in Chicago to make a political statement out of this. Yeah? I've worked for a city where you actually have a few parcels, county, then you have annexed town property, then you have county again. So in theory, the state of Delaware, responsible for that state street, would actually, theory, put up the blade, pass 3 properties, drop down the plate of this snow blow, and go further. Yeah? They don't do that. But in theory, legally, they should not have to remove that part. Yeah? Very bizarre example, but this goes down on zoning is regulations by parcel. And if you are in a transition zone or area of interest where you have annexations, sometimes parcel-based, not just subdivision-based, it gets a little bit complicated. Yeah? Again, the question of scale here is important to remember. And when we talk about subdividing, and the reasons for subdivisions will come later, cost is a problem here, and then landscaping is a problem as well. So the next 2 slides will show you actually old examples versus the zoning map of New York City of 1916. Yeah, one of the very first documents that actually explicitly notes zoning regulations. And you can see in the different patterns here, explained here as well, what kind of uses you actually had aligned there. And if you look carefully, they actually did that somewhat by streets. Yeah? Like if you look at that block here, it has actually 2 different zoning destinations versus parcel-based. Since when do we have parcel-based zoning regulations in this country? 1926. Euclid, City of Euclid versus Amber Realty. Argument was zoning along a property in different phases versus have the zone assigned just for the parcel. It's a really cool case, you will see. Yeah. Now, our thing here is the building restrictions. This is the zoning height or the building height based on zoning code. So they expressed it actually in 2 different maps or 2 different attempts. So you can see here, those are the floor area ratios, if I remember right. Height limitations, each zone is shown as a multiple of the street width. Yeah? So if you look here at the street width, you're allowed to have 2 times the building height than on the street width. So in theory, 30 feet width wide street, 60 feet high building. Yeah? And or less. Yeah? What we're dealing with this now is the idea of how does this impact actually different zoning regulations, and if you contrast that in the diagrams here between single family, multifamily, and then different uses of commercial, yeah, you can see that different building heights, and then this is the attempt to show industrial, but also that you actually, with a certain height, you go into different building materials. You switch from framed wood, depending on your climate zone and hazard zone, to mason and bricks, into steel enforced framing, or steel framing. Yeah? And so a commercial building, I think rule of thumb is 3 floors. 3 floors residential is usually 4 and 5. You've got to do something different. Then you got to change the material type. Yeah? That also changes the cost. That's the important part. That's the reason why you see across the U.S. in most areas apartment buildings up to 3 floors. Yeah? Because you can use framed wood, a combination of building materials, and you still can sell the point that you're living on the 3rd floor, you still can walk the stairs. You don't have to put an elevator in place. Yeah? Huh?
You could use Romex electrical cabling in buildings 3.
And exactly. Building codes for the building height is the cheaper. So it's easier to build 3 buildings next to each other than 1 large building on top. Yeah? Don't run a pro forma schedule on me on this. Just statements like this. Yeah? All right, reasons for subdivisioning. And you can see this is somewhat aligned with the book, how it flows. Most of the reason for subdivisioning is cost. Yeah? And as part of the decentralized decision here, I can phase out my decision-making process. Yeah? The classic example of why would I do this? If I have just a simple piece of land, I would say, we have an intersection here, and we are considering maybe later on we put a roundabout here with other adjacent properties. If I will subdivide this in simply 4 pieces, I can develop in 4 phases. I can say, hey, first I'm doing this, then second, third, here at the end comes back when I have enough money, when I have enough success with the other phases. Think about some commercial and apartment buildings, residential, commercial, residential. You put the common areas and the roads in place. Yeah. Let's do very stupid assignment. What is it? But just a simple road like this, and it ends here. And in 2 years, once you develop all the other guys, you decide, oh well, I'm actually going to put another subdivision just with homes at the end of this. Depending on your strategies and your vision and how financially feasible that is. Not the best example, but you get the message. Cost and the decision delay. Because you can, if you cut it into pieces, you don't have to develop all the pieces at once. There's a certain cost involved with that delay, no doubt. Yeah? But in terms of the site planning process, you can focus on this first, then this second, or maybe actually this first. Yeah? Why would I say focus on this first?
At the intersection.
And the intersection, assuming that the intersection is the high frequency traffic point. Yeah? So focus on this first, and then add to it. And you actually see this pattern here along Griffin Road. If you go down to University and then turn left on Griffin, you can actually see retail in strip mall. There's one Walmart, I think, and then behind the Walmart is actually like a bunch of development, like Hidden Cove, I think, with about 100 units, if I would guesstimate. Yeah. So decentralized decision also has somewhat a delay, but you also can say I subdivide, and then therefore I give the future owners of the lots the right and the decision-making process. Because in theory I could subdivide this in a typical cookie cutter way, yeah? And basically sell these lots off and say, hey owner, deal with it. Or I sell houses straight up, developed houses to new landowners. Yeah? The pace of development is impacted with this phasing as well. So if you want to do this very quick and dirty, you subdivide fast as possible, cookie cutter style, so max out the spacing between the houses, don't really care about natural resources, etc. This is actually good design if you care. And then say, okay, fine, here, fast in and fast out. Yeah? So when we do subdividing, you have to consider this as a strategic factor. And you also have to test for it and say, okay, fine, what are your visions for this piece of property? As he says, move in the imagination through the streets of a plan. Does this make sense if I do a sketch of, let's say, a circulation plan? Am I doing smooth routes or doing a grid pattern? There are certain pros and cons we learned. You know, how we flow through that kind of pattern. Does this make sense? A good plan, if you look at a plan, look at the street pattern and try to imagine how this will look like when you walk or drive this plan. Remember this. Imagine how you flow through your plan. That's part of the assignment number 2. You can see if it's just cookie cutter or was there somewhat a thought behind how people will flow, how traffic will flow. Most of the time I would argue that flow is just by the textbook. The maximum allowed built out, traffic engineering and traffic impact study done, you're cool, you're ready to go. Does this back up at a certain time for rush hour because you could have done the flow differently? Yes, it does. Didn't you care? No, you didn't. Yeah? Traffic flow and let's say transportation planning. Let's say in our example here around campus for rush hour, the amount of intersections and the consideration here and there, a roundabout would be nice. Yeah? Changes things. Yeah? Stop signs and preferred routes not considered. Right, we're getting into criticism on traffic flow. So the idea here again, good subdivisioning is good design, program and pace. Road patterns, circulation. Yes, we want to maximize the land use covered space because for us, a retail space, the larger we can provide, the more retail space we can provide on the site within the given constraints, let's say building height and parking spots. That means more retail space, more leasable space for us. Yeah? There's a difference between 10,000 and 50,000 square foot of retail space. Different amount of shops you can place. One is a magnet function and one is in a temp. Here again, imagine test for circulation bottlenecks. Will this work? What about the backup traffic? If some people in the parking lot do not know how to drive around the parking lot. There's this fantastic example. If you're going up on Cleary and Knob Hill, plantation area, that Publix There's a Publix and the Shell gas station at the corner. It's like a maze. The parking lot is like a maze because they have put in so many one-way streets and stop signs that if you look from the top in Google Maps, it really looks nice. But on the streetscape, when you look like this, where are my signs? Where is my my urban trees? I'm like, all right, where do I get out? How do I get out? So signage is a double negative on that parking lot. Bottlenecks, oh yeah. Now the second test, when we talk about subdividing, is arrange the buildings in a hypothetical fashion. I just made that up. That street design. I could also have said, you know what? I'm going to have a street design like this. And then place homes. Part of assignments too is to make you actually go on a piece of paper, and we can do that when we want to. We've actually brought some, and start thinking on the alignment of these ideas, on those uses. If I would say this is residential, this could make sense. If I say let's put some retail in front of it or commercial, how would you do that? You might actually would say, okay, fine, maybe we have to put a parking spot area here, and then have the main building attached here. Site design is an experience. It's a gut feeling that you express in your numbers and on paper. Who has done development 2, real estate development 2 yet? You're in it now. So what you'll do with the NAIOP competition sometimes is, that's usually in spring, you actually have a real world example and you need to express how you will develop this. And you are definitely forced to take out your pen and a piece of paper and start sketching. Just the alignment of an office building. If this would be your property, that's a street front. Simple effects on office building in the back. Double stores, versus straw and L. Single story. And all this is still parking. Makes a difference how you arrange uses on the site. The blue is a different cost factor, a different area occupied on the property. So just a few thoughts. I think the most important part, and this is again functional adequacy, circulation, then the ambience and the aesthetics. How do you arrange the site? For some reason, your traffic control is one of the most dominant arrangement parts. Roads, parking, and the building alignment will dominate your decision where and what to do with the building. Because you add constraints to that and limitations. Remember the example with PepsiCo campus in last week's presentation? That little campus and then walking distance and parking around it. They had different limitations. Pretty much none. The idea was come up with a design that will be great for this site. That will add quality of life to our employees. That's the reason why they designed not just a big block as a box office. They actually had those quadrants, those multiple buildings combined as courtyards. So the argument here was present the most possible light, daylight into that development. That means you need to present kind of floor area ratios. The idea of 100% coverage versus 50 versus 25%. If building height and building cost is not a limitation, you could present easily 25% coverage. If your groundwater table is deep enough, you can present parking, subterranean parking, a parking garage underground, is costly, but it makes sense to optimize the space here. If your groundwater table allows for it, probably not at a beachfront property in Fort Lauderdale. But we are not developing all over, only just in Florida. How many stores? How many floors can you go underground garage parking in Fort Lauderdale?
Well, I mean, these days with soil mixing, you can go down pretty deep. I know
Barrett
that.
just did it.
I know that in the Jade Signature and Sunny House, but now you're talking about money.
Yeah.
You do soil mixing and you basically create retaining walls, so water's not an issue. But that's big money to spend.
Big money.
To
So
do
the
that.
common example, like we said,
But you can go down maybe 7 feet before you hit water, 6 feet, 7 feet. But I mean, those tables fluctuate depending on the time of the year.
yeah, but how much money is your parking space? How much do you pay for
Oh,
it?
it's more than the $30,000 that
Yeah.
you go for above ground. It's
So-
probably 60, 50, 60.
Not making the cut. The aesthetics versus the cost is not going to make the cut. If you are in an area where you can go easily 2 or 3 floors down for parking constructions, you might consider that. Particularly in an urban setting.
Depends who, like,
Depends. Yeah,
in
depends.
Georgia they have a lot of granite. So yeah, you can go down because you don't have water, but now you gotta start blasting rock in order to get down, so.
There are cities that are doing that.
Yeah.
And on the other side, the developments where you say, okay, fine, in theory you could do a two-story deep garage, but then water issue might be the reason not to do so. But again, the idea is above ground development, keep in mind coverages and building heights as a rule of thumb will change your ambience and your design. Which means, this is an example from the book, do we have super blocks in our region? This is an example of 50 acres and larger, where you actually have a major road. Correctly, I rotated this whole thing. And you actually create a specific, almost campus-style mall system where you actually create your own circulation patterns, even a park or a lake, and you make sure that you're contained inside the property. If we look at Sawgrass, they're doing the same thing. They have the major roads around, and then they have their own road system and coordination inside. So they force and circulate you on their own, with their own policy and with their own rules. Do we have super block development in our region? Well, that depends on the size you're looking at. If you go down to, let's say, the Miami airport area, and just look at larger commercial development, malls, you can actually find these patterns. Another example for how design and natural resources should be considered. And this is the initial site plan from a sketch I found. And you can see here the water body, or stormwater retainment. And this is a typical maxed out best cookie cutter example. This is all over the nation you will find this. And this is an example of Bel Air, Maryland. Major road, entrance areas to the subdivision, and then basically the whole subdivision is cul-de-sac after cul-de-sac after cul-de-sac. A little bit interesting circulation pattern here, but if you look at that, this is just one grid with more cul-de-sacs than in streets.
Looks like Weston, the way they broke that up.
But you gotta say in Weston, at least they implemented the, and I'm looking at the north part of Weston, next to 595, how they implemented that island structure and the water body with that kind of weaving around. So what Weston did is something like recognizing we do have natural bodies and wetlands in place, and then saying, okay, fine, we actually change this to a more appropriate design, integrating nature. Nature by law and by policy. So if you look at this versus this, forgive me my French, but yeah, hell yeah, this is definitely different. But just from the idea of sketching something, what's the main difference you can see?
It leaves a lot of the natural, well, it leaves the wetlands intact.
That's for sure, but look at the structures. Look at the structures. How did I sketch structures here?
As blocks.
As lots.
Well, yeah, lots.
Yeah? This is a lot-based sketch. Over there, it's a building-based. Now I'm just making nice homes, or maybe even say, hey, you know what, I'm actually doing quads in T-shape. Looks completely different from this. They actually changed density here. Yeah. Right now you don't know exactly if these are duplexes, single family, or even, let's say, townhomes as 6 units next to each other as one block. Yeah? But it could be. So you could, instead of, this could be easily a six townhomes, ding, 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 next to each other, freestanding with some environment around it. And then you have a gap in between, and you have again here, maybe 4. Yeah? So think about this. The little information this kind of sketch gives us, we can already come up with some creative idea. Apparently from the pattern, this is single family, residential. But we don't know 100% if this is actually, what kind of density is associated with that residential. Yeah? Is it 1 acre lots, single family, detached garage, you know, maybe a pool in the back, or is it duplex or quads? Quads as a T shape because you actually have a first floor and a second floor with parking and garage areas in between. We see this in some of the subdivisions here in the area. Consider still a condominium / townhome, so financing is different when you buy it, but it increases somewhat density, but gives you some more common spaces and open spaces. So in terms of long-term planning, this is kind of the example, jumping over to the example of special types, campuses, small towns, regions, manufacturing, hospitals. We recently had a huge news breaking about a hospital moving here, being attached to campus, And then what's commonly not really discussed, power generation or waste management. If you have people living somewhere, they produce waste. How do you deal with the waste? Do you recycle? Do you have curbside recycling? That means pick up your recycling, or do you actually have to drop off all your paper and your glass? Makes a huge difference in the way people recycle if you have a good pickup service. And then again, at the end, who plans what and with whom? I do actually have visuals for that. The question further, we need to ask, planning for placeholders of the future. Maxing out your space at a given time might be a luxury. Because you might actually find that this gap here has a future land use for something in 5 to 10 years. Can you, as a private developer, take on the other side of the luxury of leaving that gap? Probably not. As a university or as a town, you can make that judgment call in your comprehensive plan. And you say, hey, this is a reserved development space for something that comes in 5 to 10 years. Planning for a placeholder. Don't be afraid. If you are a community that is old in demographics, you might have different planning ideas and visions how you develop your community in the next 15 to 20 years. But if you say, Well, we're a community that is at the edge of changing its demographics. Therefore, we might want to reserve specific spaces for, let's say, future recreational users. You mark that up in your comprehensive plan. That's sometimes hard to sell to your council members and or your community. Again, at the end of the day, the structure of spaces and paths is probably the principal tools by which the long-range site planner can shape the visual form. This is Lynch talking from a planning perspective. Yeah? Real estate developers that come in and argue we have a long-term range of planning in our property are very rare. I've actually met one in the past 10 years, 12 years, in the areas I have been working on, where they said, you know what, we have half the valley is actually a family heritage fund, and we want to redevelop this valley. But we're going to do this over the next 2 generations, or 20 years. We're going to build residential here, we're going to build residential here, but we are going to phase it out. And if this is populated enough, we're going to add actually commercial uses into place, a new commercial subsector. And they actually laid it out so well that the city of Boise, in this case, actually designed a planned unit development plan for that valley. Their own zoning jurisdiction and doing this step by step. So when I left this spring, they actually just broke ground for the commercial development, creating a sub-center 5 to 6 miles out of real downtown. But they articulated 5 to 10 years down ago how they actually want to develop the next 10, 15 years ahead. That also means that the return of investment and the financial pressures to develop are different. It's not fast in, fast out. It's keep it going step by step. All right, last few slides, guys, so you don't fall asleep. When it comes to campus planning, I found Berkeley interesting. So Berkeley here is 1914 and then 1956 in their campus plan. And this is about how you align form and circulation again. And how you actually preserve certain forms. Let's take a look at those 2 buildings and the patterns around it. You can identify those 2 buildings again and the pattern. But the whole sector here, compared to 50 years ahead of time, changed because this was the original plan, like almost like a mall, with walkability, etc. And then they actually changed this. If I remember right, those are dorms. Yeah? The functionality of the space has changed and has been reassigned. Therefore, the plan had changed. If you do a side-by-side comparison to what's the last 2 or 3 years happening there, you can actually see this as a major road. There's somewhat this as a major road. Then you can see here the east side of campus coming down here. Can you identify the 2 major buildings?
Yeah, right there with the
Right here. That's a little bit off scale, but you can see the original shape of the original mall coming up here, and then redevelopment occurred here again. The old dorms here basically are gone again. Versus this area got more filled in. Particularly, I would argue that because this is pretty much built out, and if you want to go as a university campus, you want to do site acquisition outside of your campus boundaries, that is expensive. There are stories about universities buying properties under the radar with shadow companies off-site and then merge them. I think Georgetown sometimes came into the news. Don't want to play anyone here, but it's interesting to see. My last university had issues as well, that people would wait until they sell because prices would go up. Yes, please.
At my undergraduate college, Northeastern University, they're a private university inside the city of Boston. Nothing about like shadow organizations in terms of buying a property, but it's a very time-consuming process.
It takes years. It takes years.
Years in terms of discussing with local government, neighborhood
Yeah.
associations, especially that neighborhood associations have a lot of leverage against the private university in terms of providing concessions for the.
Who has heard about eminent domain? You should have. Everyone should have raised their hands because I was not part of the topic 2 weeks ago. Yeah. Eminent domain would be a tool you could consider for the public good and the better good of the community to use, let's say, to find a way to build out or acquire that next block. Yeah, that could be a tool. Eminent domain is also a tool that has been abused too many times in the past. Yeah, and therefore it's like one of those bad words in the planning world. Yeah, the next one is the M word, the moratorium, which is like the emergency stop for planning processes. If your planning department is overwhelmed with building permits and they need more time to approve all this, in theory, the council can actually approve a moratorium, and then they will not accept more planning applications, building permits, etc., for a given time frame. Let's say 1 year, and you have 1 year to catch up. Yeah. So for planning law fans, Lake Tahoe, the famous Lake Tahoe cases are part of this moratorium issue because they extended that time frame beyond that original time. Yeah? So, among other issues. Moratorium is the other bad word. It's basically like the flashbang grenade for the SWAT team. You hold everything, you emergency stop for the planner. Alright, do we have this? No. Anyone knows what that is? You're right now sitting here.
Oh.
Nova Southeastern Campus Plan from EDSA. Again, you can see landscaping, flow of water, flow of traffic and pedestrian zones. Yeah, and
What's better than getting 25% off your next prescription?
definitely listening to my lecture is definitely better than your prescription. Yeah, but all right, listen here. But you also can see the general idea of how they aligned flow patterns and spaces. Yeah? We learned last week that there's actually a shell here, and the statue here is kind of a radiant out idea of, this was the way. The pathways here would radiate out, and you can have certain flows and streams of energy. Yeah? Looks different on the plan than actually if you go walk this, if you're on the ground. Yeah? So I want to skip this. This is a thought you have to consider about the what ifs over time. Sprawl and transit risk problems are definitely the case. Where are we at? I want to show you one more thing before you take a small break. Here. So in terms of subdivisions, this is work a former student of mine did for a GS class. And stop, don't do this. And so what we did is, this is very simplified, was a student's project for a neighborhood in Boise, Idaho, West Valley subdivision, West Valley area. And we found land use data, and he took a tool we taught in GIS, animation, time series. The textbook is using the US capitals to have them pop up. He actually used the timestamp of each of the subdivisions, here, and labeled them and had them run as an animation. And this is my best example where it comes to combining 76 to 2009, land use data, subdivisions, and sprawl. And I want you to look at the pattern and then how much more fine the grid occurs. large pieces of chunk and then more and more small pieces of cutting. Around 2000 this will explode. This was all farmland. Very short animation, but somewhat scary in the way of Todd, yeah. This is the west side of Boise, Idaho, in about 2000, between 2000 and 2005. They basically exploded in terms of agricultural land, subdivided in cookie cutter style. This is the cookie cutter style. Same type of house, bang, 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 bang. Yeah, best bang for the buck, literally. Particularly made possible from a easy available mortgage market, and transportation costs pretty much zero based on gasoline and just big roads. Every pattern you have seen, the major road pattern is 1 mile by 1 mile. So this is 10 to 15 miles out with a 10 to 15 minutes drive time max. Not like here 15 miles means almost an hour. Alright, speaking of drive time, we'll take a break, get the Legos, and then we'll talk about the assignment just a little bit before we hit the Legos. This is part of the assignment. This is what you can see here is actually part of the larger metropolitan area of Cincinnati. Main downtown of Cincinnati is here. Yeah? Football stadium, etc. This is Covington, with Kentucky coming here on the river, Ohio River. On the side you're looking at for the assignment is about here, and made this screenshot to give you the idea. That's a very large PDF document with tons of numbers for 5, 10, and 15 minutes drive time, and you can see that this is along the interstate and how drive time basically zooms out this whole area. So instead of doing radial circles, drive time is a little bit more appropriate. You can see that within 15 minutes you do not reach the so-called west side of Cincinnati, but you cover most of the metropolitan core area. Yeah? So let's take a 3-minute break. I get the Lego blocks, and then we talk about the assignment, and then we do a plan.
remember when we watched the video? You were counting?
Oh, that was death
Brutal.
by 1,000 times.
So what do you think about that message? Broken pipe by the
Crazy week. When did you get this?
today?
Me or ahead?
Has been crazy.
The other agent said it says City of Fort Lauderdale Treasurer Division accounts received. Yellow handle by hose, 40 fan.
Extremely
Pipe broken by hose.
What?
I'm not sure what that means. I mean, is it metered or not? Treasuries, money. But is there a metered line or not a metered line? I have to go take a look at it.
Yeah, they're doing their inspection right now. Which is good. I'm probably gonna ask them to fix that. So, I'll fix that. I just wondering if that'd be a city issue.
No, not if it's on the property. It's your issue.
Well, they did the drainage pipe.
Let's do it all, because it's the whole, is it in the property or is it out? Your house. Probably have to use it.
Right. So I'm going to post this on Blackboard a little bit later. So, on what? Are you okay? You got it under control? All right, let's start over. So assignment number 2, or the site planning sketch. I was asked to implement a little bit more sketching. And the question is how to do this in a class that focuses more on a hypothetical worlds example with urban plan, and then actually present real world examples as well. Yeah? So this is my approach on bringing a real world example into the classroom, but putting a completely hypothetical umbrella on top of it to have you open up your creative side. Yeah? And follow up on the reverse design, where you had no idea about the space, no idea about what's going on with the economics or functional side, and you just looked at it and figured out, if I have specific land uses I can assign to this, what is my vision and what kind of patterns would I create. Yeah? And one example what Ben gave was even like plug out an area for, let's say, a university. If you guys remember right, he basically said, hey, I'm going to put here like a think tank university block. Yeah? This is a little bit different. This is an example from a place I used to live, which was under construction back then, under actually scrutiny by law. It was an eminent domain case where the homeowners actually won. Yeah? And the idea here is, the typical way I write setups is, I give you a purpose so you understand this guy has an idea with this. Another reason why I address the assignment in class is also understand that there is actually a purpose behind it. My outcome is that you need to think on a piece of paper, think your thoughts, and then create something like I sketched here as part of the assignment. Doesn't have to be perfect. You know? We're not landscape architects with years of experience. You know? And we only have a specific time frame for this. So don't overthink it. Think about more blocks like we do here. You have certain building types you can rearrange and shift around. Yeah? My idea was also today maybe have certain building shapes on paper and you just shift them around like you would do here your building blocks on Lego. It's a time-consuming exercise. Yeah? But for the purpose of today to introduce the assignment, just imagine that. You would actually have a block of a building, let's say a Walmart, and you would say, hey, which corner of my property would that be appropriate? And then think about that flow, how you impose that. You all have seen enough plans, master plans, and pictures of spaces. You know? So the setup is your intern, you know, and your supervisor is a little bit overwhelmed, and basically said, here, take a look at this project. Nobody wants to know, nobody knows anymore what we want to do, come up with ideas. A different approach. Usually you have an idea as a firm, this is our pattern, this is what we develop. This is blank scratch. A site, its environments, its context, you can develop and think about how you would like to do this. No? Building a casino on the site might not be an appropriate idea, because 5 miles down the road is actually downtown casino now. No? So there are certain things you can rule out, learning about that site. The site itself, I gave just a short breakdown. It's about 13.5 acres in size. You can see this is the original landscape years ago. This area here is actually a small commercial real estate area for retail and shopping. Yeah, this is an office building, and then you actually have like typical entertainment area with bars and food. There's Victoria's Secret, Macy's. Nothing really big, but the agglomeration to combine. One side is facing more the entertainment, the other side is more the shops part. You know, the idea was that the same developer here would acquire this site, and they used eminent domain. Those 3 parties actually sued in separate cases. They actually won, or the court ruled that they are actually right. And the idea is basically, this is your playground. Right now it's fully developed. So don't cheat yourself and Google the site and take a look at it. The reason why I took this site is it has a history. A planning and real estate development important history. And I'm also just 5 miles away tomorrow night. So my plan is actually to walk this site and take pictures for next week. So you present your ideas and I tell you what the real world has developed on it. Yeah? And the reason why I have to disclose the site where this is actually, so you actually have a little bit more context and can build the story of why you want to develop it in a specific way. Yeah? This is a certain trade-off using a historical real-world example. Yeah? So you can see this is actually the connector to the interstate. Want to connect, this is the off-ramp from the interstate and somewhat feeds from the other development here. This is a main connector to one of the main streets here. I will show you that in the overview side. Yeah? I spent some time, this is a map you can see, on mapping this site for you guys. This is all single page PDFs available with somewhat a scale. You can see here again the overview, the site with the few houses on it. Picture was taken this way. This is the commercial existing development. Interstate coming in with an on and off ramps area here. So a high frequency connection. We're talking 330,000 people within the city of Cincinnati. This is actually the city of Norwood. Yeah. And it's a 1.2 million metropolitan area, 1.3 million, something like that. So within the hour you have that million. Yeah. High frequency interstate here connecting to Kentucky and other branches. Yeah. This is one of the main development or major arterials. Yeah. And then you have schools, mostly single family, some apartment buildings along the major roads here. Yeah. Yes, please.
Sorry, where's the site on the map? Like, so sorry, I was just
Here, this is the site. Yeah, so if you look down here, this is so-called Hyde Park area of Cincinnati, and I can give you the address if you want to. So if you zoom in, this is the same site close up, aerial photography. You can see the interstate. There are bridges as passovers. Main Street. This is a little bit tilted, this is not perfectly north, but you can see, okay, fine, there are existing roads. You can't touch these buildings. You know? If you look at the different close-up, that's the elevation data. And one of the other reasons why I picked an example from Cincinnati, I was looking for elevation data. So you actually can see in 2-foot differences that this is not just flat. It's a little bit elevation, and you can see that this is a major drop, 640 here to 612 down to 610 on the interstate. This is like major ramp. Yes, please.
Where's this 638? Does that mean within?
Feet elevation?
Yeah, so where that 638 is that for the circle next to it or within the larger one?
Good question. This is 630, 628.
I think that's within.
I can relabel this, but the important part is you see that there's some elevation.
Yeah.
Elevation should not be your problem.
It's within because the 630
Yes.
is on the other one too.
Yeah, should be within. So it's just an illustration on an additional information what you get if you look at a surveying plan, that this is the site itself in black, and then the environments, purple is actually the street center line. Yeah, so you get a little bit the idea of the streets, and you can see definitely that there is interstate with a different type of grading. Then you have pretty much a bump, like almost like a cliff. So there are certain limitations with the environment. Yeah? And the next part is, I cleaned this out to show you actually existing buildings outside of that site. Yeah? Medical complex, office complex, this is the shopping center. And then if you're here in Edmondson, you turn right, you get to the main park area, main Hyde Park area. And then you have residential single family on this side. Yeah? I try to very simplify this, and the idea is then to say, with the given information and the economic report, this is the next part, what type of land uses would you actually choose, given the environment here, and given your personal interest in real estate development? Yeah? A completely blank check. I want you to think if this would be a site for your own personal development. Yeah?
Money aside.
Money aside. Well, you're not putting $1 billion development on this. Yeah? So, but I'm not limiting you on $1 million or $10 million. Think about what is feasible and how would you create this as place creation. How do you transform a blank space into a place? Yeah? Ben's Plaza.
Value.
What?
Same with felt value.
Ben's Plaza. How would Ben's Plaza look like? Yeah? And lastly, to give you the real estate component, so I ran for the 5 to 10 and the 15 minutes. And it doesn't usually shows here for the custom made, it didn't break it up this morning. I actually ran you the most recent data available from our web server, and you can see within 5 minutes, you can even see the projections on demographics, household data, how many units are within those miles, these areas, yeah? Population above a certain age, how many people are married, not married, then industry types, industry summary, what is going on with retail trade and food and drink in that area, and retail gap between demand and supply. Yeah, how many people actually need something, what is actually given in that. So you can see in 5 minutes drive time, something heavy going on, a lot of bars and restaurants, but motor vehicles and parts and dealers, maybe not. This is a long report. It breaks down again here in retail expenditures, worthwhile to dig in. Part of the GIS class explores it more in depth, but I thought I'd give you a little bit more retail and dollar amounts, what's going on here. And then you can scroll this down This is now for 10 minutes. You can see that it's changed in the panel. Yeah. The idea, and going back to the assignment, land check. Propose land use and their linkages. And say, hey, you could do this single family completely, but you also could maybe say we combine land uses. How would you align them? Yeah? Present a likely to scale sketch. And I say a likely to scale because the map has a scale. It's hand drawn. We're not going to bargain around a few inches off, you know. But the idea is really what I try to do here on the whiteboard. Engage you in sketching. Yeah? So don't overthink it with completely watercolors and 3D drawings of palm trees like we have seen from the professional world. This is the early first step in drawing things and try to put your idea into a sketch. And not just say, I'm building an office building 3 stories high, this is my performer. Gotta show me on that plan where would that building be and how you envision the outline, let's say, for the parking versus circulation on the property. Very simply, very smooth. Huh? Again, sounds like massive, crazy work. It's a creative assignment. Yeah? Using site plan assignment number 3 with the blank space might help you. What I would do is I would start sketching and I would just print it out and fit them. Yeah? If you are a GIS geek, I have the GIS data. I can give you all the maps I showed you in electronic form, not just as PDF. So you could, in theory, move around these things with on your computer if you want to do that. I gave you limitations here. So you gotta, if you have a specific amount of space available, if this is your property, you just can't build this out with buildings only. So if you say I'm building one big box, you gotta have a specific space for parking. And then maybe consider how this is going to be accessed. 13.5 acres is not too small, not too big. You can do some serious site planning damage on this. As a fun part. Right? I put in different uses, the stereotype cookie cutter. Versus the more extreme specialty shops and even hotels. Yes, please.
What's the footprint for IKEA usually?
Don't know.
I figured you would know that.
Don't know, but we can measure that. Because it's easy to, the footprint for IKEA is easy to measure because you zoom over an IKEA, use the scale of the side of the map, and you know how many inches that IKEA is on the map versus the ideal world. And it's usually a 2-floor building. So your cross-floor space would be calculatable as well. Yeah? But the building footprint itself should be fairly. Cincinnati per se doesn't have, Cincinnati GIS data, the way I looked at it, doesn't have actually an IKEA. The IKEA for Cincinnati would be up here in that area. It's actually Westminster, outside of the county. But we can look that up if you want to. Would be an IKEA is in drive time.
Okay, so it's
Looking at that in 13.5 acres, you probably would get one on it. Like look at it here, 136th Street.
Yeah.
It doesn't appear that big. Then I don't know if they have different sizes, but a standard IKEA does not appear as big.
There's one, I want to say it's in New Jersey, when you're taking off from the airport in New York, you can see the thing. It's enormous.
Is it just the facade, the sizing of the sign and the front, or is it the warehousing behind it as well? That's the question.
Yeah.
You could also argue that if this is the only one in that area for that market, the warehousing is pretty much disproportionately larger than usual because otherwise you have the logistics in the back.
Building,
Right.
the IKEA building is larger in New Jersey because It is a approximate location to the port. The yard it's a little bit larger than an average, but because they're right next to the ports, they have faster access to faster inventory and all that.
So if I look at IKEA, let's say in the larger Cincinnati area versus the one here, versus Germany and Singapore, they have been about the same size. But good question. Any questions about this right now?
Is all of this on the
Will be-
assignment content as well?
Will be on Blackboard.
Okay.
Yeah? Short ride,
I
short.
can't go print it right now. Like, so I can't, I don't have access to print it after class. Like, it's not already up.
It's not posted yet.
Oh.
Yeah, it's not posted yet. Again, submission, what you need to do is basically a short write-up, short justification. I said, it's about a page, half a page to page. Saying, hey, I'm choosing 150 units of single family because of blah, blah, blah. Yeah? Very short. I want you to encourage that graphics component, that sketching. Also said, whatever you sketch, you are submitting. If you sketch 50 different documents, throw them in, because there's value in it. So it's part of the in addition to what you want to submit as a grade, if you want to have feedback on additional sketch work, I will be happy to give so. No?
What if we're really bad at sketching and drawing?
There's nothing worse than my sketching and drawing.
So I'm good at like math, but I'm not good at drawing. And I work in construction, so I can't even do like basic
Why?
sketches. Huh?
Try.
Okay.
Let's say, okay, here. This is an example, quick and dirty for the site.
So we're doing a top-down view, right?
Yeah, like this is the site. Look, this is my approach of sketching that site without looking at it. Yeah? So if you, simple example. The way I approach that could be something like, this is a major intersection. This is residential streets. You know, there's a huge intersection on top. This is infrastructure, federal infrastructure coming in here. So, could I, hypothetically, in terms of flow, could I do a roundabout here? Or could I attach to this? Knowing already that I will cause tons of traffic trouble, because this is a major inlet for the whole neighborhood in the section. Yeah? Or I'm saying, you know what, out of this, my main entrance is here. If I just think about how I would connect that site, even without thinking on the uses. Let's say I want to do retail. This is out of scale. Let's see how we can score this. Here, 400 feet. Yeah, that's the bottom. So just looking at this, let's say this is 100 foot. So if this is 100 foot, 1, 2, this would be a 200 feet long building, 100 by 200, 100 by 200 roughly. Yeah? So think about how you would occupy this. The demand for retail on, if I do retail shops, like a mini mall, would be 1/2. So that means 1.5 times of this space would be parking. Doesn't mean that the parking is directly allocated in front of this. I could also say I can move the parking here. A little bit larger. This is kind of the thinking process I want you to encourage you. What kind of uses I would be interested would make sense based on what's here, and what's in the economic report for 10, 15 minutes drive time. Would it make sense to build another restaurant here if I have, within 5 miles, about $250,000 lack in restaurants and entertainment? or I'm going to cannibalize this location because I'm putting another Burger King here versus McDonald's. Think about that. How do you approach a larger scale product like this?
Trump University.
You could do an educational outlet. Fine, yeah. So you're challenged here, not the sketching part. It doesn't have to be right angle, perfect, situated buildings. It is about the vision you put into or on top of this paper. You don't have to sketch 3D sites, top-down approach. You just make an alignment and say, well, this could be residential, and we have the street going on, or we move around the street. You already see it, I might run out of paper. Play with the ideas. Yes.
Just out of curiosity, is it possible you could do the parking? Is that only surface parking, or could you do elevated parking or underground parking?
Whatever you want.
Ha! You can present the argument, hey, you know what, I'm doing this in a parking structure. All of that is going to be parking structure for the whole area, or 2 parking structures. Underground parking in that area, probably 1 or 2 floors. And you get in trouble, cost-wise, and probably water table. But you can make the argument and say, hey, you know what? Let's rearrange this a little bit and we compensate for the limitations in parking. We propose a parking garage. That's part of this justification short write-up. You don't have to write a feasibility study that is 50 pages long with money-wise breakdowns. And assume typical cost, $30,000 a parking structure, parking lot, something like that. But you don't have to present the full numbers. You don't have to present any numbers. An MGM might not make sense as a casino, because there's a casino close by.
In Ohio?
Cincinnati, Ohio, Norwood. I can give you guys the address. It's actually on the report. It's the Norwood, Kenwood-Norwood extension. Again, the idea is do not look at the existing site, what they built. You cheat yourself with your imagination.
But we do need to look at the surrounding area.
Yeah.
Well, I meant within the travel plan, right?
So the basic information to make a judgment call, if I want to do a retail versus residential development, or somewhat in between, is there. If you want to dig a little bit deeper, fine. This is developed. So what I do encourage you guys is to at least start thinking how you would approach this before you really open up that site and realize what they have done. So it's like writing a Christmas wish list, but also already knowing that Santa put some Christmas gifts underneath the tree and you open up the wrapping before Christmas. Don't do that. Will take out the fun if you want to develop that specific time. Let's say they put a roller coaster into that corner. There's no reason why if you present a roller coaster park